Hello everyone, I'm Shemcat and I don't mess around when playing games. I have one of those mice with buttons on the side, I enter competitive Smash Bros tournaments, and of course, I'm a speedrunner. Not everything us speedrunners do is a complete sweatfest though. We have what are known as joke categories, where we complete a pretty silly objective in a fraction of the time it'd take to do a full any percent speedrun. Think nipple percent in Super Mario Odyssey, or doorbells in The Simpsons Hit and Run, or, dual laser radio in hole percent from Portal 2. The Xenoblade series also has its own meme speedrun, this being hat percent in Torna, the Golden Country, Xenoblade 2's DLC. Now I can't imagine this category name means anything to you, so let's take a look at what hat percent actually means. Once we get to Auresco, the royal capital, the game forces us to get to community level 2 to progress the story, and spawns in a bunch of extra side quests for us to do. One of which being bolstering sales, where we need to help Obibi make some hats to save her business, and critically choose which hat to market. For our choices, we have the knit hat and the casual cap, the first being 1 input faster, but having minus 1000 aura, whereas the GOAT of caps gains an incredible plus 5000 aura at the cost of a single extra input down to select it. But either way, we have to collect the materials for both, with time ending on your hat selection. However, before we even get to Auresco, we need to leave Lasaria, get through Gormott, accelerate into Aletta, and take a dive into Donarg, and therefore complete the story up to that point. My PB was a 42:01, which I actually got on my 20th birthday, so a fair amount longer than your average joke speedrun, but when compared to your average Xenoblade speedrun, yeah, that's actually pretty short, innit?
Aren't we intrepid?
At the start of the hat percent run, we go straight into combat, so I guess this is where I should start explaining the combat of this run, starting from the very basics. We control the driver Laura, and when she is in close range of an enemy, she will automatically attack the enemy, in what are known as auto attacks, which go in cycles of 3. Often, these cycles will start off very fast, so a little tech we can do is flick our stick for a split second to move, which cancels the end lag of our auto attack, and lets us start the cycle again, letting us rapid fire on the enemy. This is good because it lets us charge Path of Thorns, Laura's first art. These are bigger attacks with bonus effects, charged by connecting auto attacks, and so the faster auto attacks from our auto attack or AA cancelling lets us use arts all the more frequently. After using 2 Path of Thorns, we have enough charge in the rightmost slot to use our special, these being elemental attacks that are charged up through arts usage rather than auto attacks. I pay attention to how much damage this first Bluefoo has taken up to this point, so that when I use my special, the very last hit is what deals the finishing blow. This looks very cold and calculated, but is also very important because if the Bluefoo dies to any other attack, Laura will actually disengage from combat at the start of the next phase. Slow and unoptimal and not good enough for our joke speedruns. We then move on to the second phase, this time against 3 enemies. We start off with a Path of Thorns on the first guy, and then use another on a different enemy to spread out some damage. In the base game, we would control a driver who could swap which blade they were controlling, but in Torna, our drivers and blades physically swap places with an extra attack to transition between them. Here we swap from Laura to Jin, since they're the only 2 characters, and chuck out a Chill Stroke, which is Jin's only art currently. We use AA cancelling again to finish the last of our enemy's HP, and you'll see that last art brought our special up to the 2nd tier. Once you've used enough arts without using a special, it'll tier up, and you can use a more powerful special up until tier 3. You can actually go up to tier 4, but that isn't really relevant to this speedrun, so there's no need to explain it. If you want to find out how it works, go watch an NL video or something. Anyway, once the 3rd phase begins, we use our tier 2 special and use another Chill Stroke immediately after using our 3rd auto attack of the sequence, which is what's known as a cancel attack, and increases our arts damage. We then keep the cancels up by swapping back to Laura and use another Path of Thorns. At this point, we've practically got enough damage to finish the fight, and we'll do so after being given a tier 4 special for free. The fight won't actually be able to end without using this tier 4. If you go too far away from Jin and it reverts to a tier 3, the fight won't end unless you manually charge one up again. Okay, that was quite a lot of explanation for just the tutorial, but I wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page on how this combat works, because it is a complicated system and not immediately obvious what we're doing all of the time. And because we're taking the joke categories seriously here. After using our DLC privilege to disable the enemy aggro, we can then run forward to the first campsite of the run. At these sites, we can rest to level up using bonus XP, make pouch items, and chat with our party members. The story requires us to make a dish known as trout strollu, which are made up of these materials shown on screen now. They have a guaranteed spawn in the spots around the camp, so we pick up the minimum number required to make the meal and head back to the camp. After cooking, we are kicked out, but immediately go back in to rest and use our bonus XP and get one additional level up, taking us from level 2 to level 3. Bonus XP is gained throughout the game by doing things like completing quests or viewing landmarks, with our third level here giving Laura and Jin an additional art to use in combat. We pick up the rigid vest from the tutorial treasure trove, but rather than putting it on, we need to do some other stuff in the menus. Let's do a menu speed round.
Ready? Go!
Swap Laura's arts around and upgrade her new one, Hungry Snake, unlock honed reflexes on our affinity chart to increase her agility stat, equip the rigid vest to increase her health, and finish off by going to Jin, swapping his arts around and upgrading Snow Blast, which we just unlocked. We then get to our first non-required collection point of the run. These are spots that will drop generally 2 to 5 items of a specific type after you've interacted with it. This run needs items for 3 different quests, and in order to do them as fast as possible, I'll count the number of items in my head. To make things easier, I'll also show on screen what relevant items I pick up, and how close I am to having enough. Before getting up to our next boss fight, we can do a tricky jump to get up to the secluded boneway slightly earlier by cutting a corner and can approach one of Malus's gargoyles. We've also picked up some more tree type items and some fish type items, fully collecting all the necessary corkscrew creepers. To start off this fight, we auto attack cancel until we can use Path of Thorns, and then build up to our second art, Hungry Snake. Upon a successful hit, and as long as we get lucky, this art will inflict the break status, which Jin can convert into a topple, leaving the gargoyle inactionable, and then use a tier 2, which deals increased damage to toppled enemies. From here, we can get in a cycle with both Laura and Jin, use an art, and then cancel into your tier 1. From there, we can Vanguard switch and continue using arts and tier 1 specials, making sure to topple with Hungry Snake and Jin switch over when we can. This also builds up stacks of Jin's skill Transcend, which increases damage by 30% each time we Vanguard switch. By the end of this fight, we do very high damage, and are able to gain a whole 5 levels after getting the win, completing our art set and sending us straight into the fight with Adam and Mithra. We start up on Mithra and use all of Laura's arts, comboing those into a Jin tier 2 on a topple. Another one of Jin's arts, and we then turn our attention to Adam, even though Mithra's still standing. But that's fine, since Laura's third art, Spinning Wheel, deals area of effect damage, almost taking her down alongside a couple of Jin's rearguard arts. Adam is dealt with similarly to the gargoyle. Just keep throwing out arts and specials, but we do so trying to avoid Rising Arc. When he, spoiler alert, joins the party, this is our launch art. However, when we're fighting him, it instead inflicts Break, creating times where your arts get cancelled and you lose out on some decent damage. If you've watched this far, nothing in the run should seem too crazy to you. We've just been playing through the start of Torna, but faster than you would in a casual playthrough. This changes now. Xenoblade 2 and Torna have this glitch called the Zombie Hover, and in Torna, it lets us fly by repeatedly swapping between blades and jumping. Let's take a step back though. Here's how it works. Okay, so Xenoblade 2 is a weird and rushed game, and the developers forgot to remove some things, such as holding the bumpers triggers A and down on the D-pad for 5 seconds, causing you to die. But if you execute this code somewhere where we can't die, for example the camp, leaving will cause us to be in the death state. In this state, any previously lethal falls will let us live on 1 HP, and after the fall, we'll continue to be in the falling state, constantly gaining downwards momentum. This wouldn't do much beforehand, but we just unlocked Haze as Laura's second blade, and Adam as the second party member. This allows us to get both Jin and Haze into the death state, which makes it possible to jump out of our blade switches, and jump and switch and jump and switch, up until we get to the Lofton Nature Preserve. From here, we can tag the Danag Desert, but keep running to the side, and we'll eventually reach this rock. This beautiful piece of geology allows for us to jump, go into the falling animation, and eventually clip through the floor, and land on the part of the rock that goes underneath the sand. By just running off, we can fall down into the tasteless altar. If you recall, this is the area that was sectioned off by a bunch of force fields, but once you got inside, you were greeted by the Nop on Half Sage, who would spawn in the golden unique monsters in the endgame, but more importantly for this speedrun, he has some chests with some endgame gear. But before equipping these items, we warp out and take a trip to Hyber Village. We're going to need to go there later, so this will save us a trip later, and give us early access to some useful ox cores to put on our blades. Before we continue on with the story, it's a good idea to continue the trend of getting to areas early, and also head to Auresco. Whilst none of the quest NPCs are spawned in yet, we get some extra collection points this way, most importantly these fish spots, which give us our final Grimdark Crab, one of the hardest items to get in the run without losing significant time. Running through here is always really chill. Back in Lasaria, we can power up our characters with all our new stuff. In the Tasteless Altar, we picked up a beta scope to help our consistency with getting breaks, and for our blades, the Half Sage was holding onto gold and silver chips. These will increase our auto attack stat considerably, which is the basis for all of our damage. They also have the bonus effect of increasing enemy drop rates, incredibly helpful for the consistency of certain items. The treasure trove in Hyber Village had 4 ox cores, 2 opening art 2s, and 2 hunter's chemistry 2s, the latter increasing our affinity at the start of battle. This stat dictates how closely linked our blade and driver are, and we want to reach max affinity, indicated by a gold line between them, as fast as possible, so we can get the benefits of a higher critical rate, higher special damage, faster art recharge rate, faster movement speed, as well as some special benefits for Jin. His skill, Full Resonance, activates at max affinity, and at level 1 will increase our damage by another 60%, and even make us take 10% less damage on top of this. And now for another menu lightning round.
Ready? Go!
We'll swap Adam and Myth around, and then learn First Strike 1 and Miles Ahead 1, so Adam and Laura can use the art assigned to the X button at the start of battle, and then give Laura her beta scope for better break RNG. The blades then get our chips, Jin and Mythra will get the strongest silver chip, and Haze the slightly weaker gold chip. Finally, finishing off with the ox cores. Haze gets Hunter's Chemistry, Mythra gets both, and Jin gets Opening Art. With these, we can fight these Antals blocking the path, and we are so insanely overpowered for this stage in the game that a single ray of punishment from Mythra will one-shot both of them. And then all 3 of them. When we go to skip the cutscene, we can start holding the death code again, so that once we're back in action, Jin is in the death state. In addition to flight, the death state allows us to pass cutscene triggers, such as the one with Kame to give us the tutorial quest line. Once we get past, we can just talk to Ged and head to Gormott and finish the longest segment of the run.
Think you can take me?
As soon as we arrive in Gormott, we're greeted by a weird glitchy menu. This happens because the community tab was never unlocked after skipping past Kame, but the game still wants to show you each NPC we talk to in that section of the menu. Luckily, it isn't too tricky to get out from here by just accessing a different part of it, such as the quest log. We can even skip travel out of this menu, which we use later to save some time. Gormott has a completely different set of collectible items compared to Torna, which means it's worth picking up some more collection points along the way, as well as taking a few detours to get some landmarks we can teleport to later, rather than getting to Torrigoth as fast as possible. After arriving in Torrigoth, we find it in ruins, and Laura's mother buried in the cemetery. But more pressingly, we also find the Ardanian army. Ray of Punishment is still strong enough to one-shot the soldiers, and after resisting launch, Bridget goes down to a Snow Blast and a Jin Tier 1 special. Realizing they were thoroughly outmatched, and that we would waste no time sparing our foes, Bridget decided to join our party, alongside her driver Hugo and his other blade Aegeon, rounding out our party with a third driver and the designated tank, who can actually do a pretty good job holding aggro. Since we tagged Singbri's bow earlier, we can warp there and pretty quickly go into our next fight against the Despair Ropple. The strategy here uses a hidden mechanic of Xenoblade 2's combat, just range. If you find yourself the perfect distance away from the enemy, you'll be dealing 15% extra damage. The perfect range is different for each weapon, but for this fight we can use the edge of the scorched ground as a visual cue. You can also use the element icon in the middle of your art as an indicator. When you're in just range, it'll grow more vigorously. And yeah, Jin is strong, and yet Adam wants to give the credit to Aegeon for some reason, like he didn't even take increased water damage, but whatever. Laura's in trouble with a very nasty Gormott who wants to remove her head, and when you consider the goal of this speedrun, that is about the worst thing that could happen. This fight is just with Laura and Haze, and to speed things up, we use her talent art, Swallow's Flight. These are high risk, high reward arts that are unique to each character in Torna. This will halve Laura's HP, but instantly refresh all her arts. This lets us instantly dunk all our art damage into Gormott, and by the time we've gotten a break, we can swap over to Haze. She's no Jin or Mithra, but with her gold chip, she's something of an expert of quickly dispatching our enemies. And now I have to explain fusion combos. I've already talked about driver combos, or at least breaking and toppling, but there are also blade combos going up in 3 stages. Stage 1 can be started by using any blade special, Stage 2 by a tier 2 or above special when we're in Stage 1, and Stage 3 can be triggered by a tier 3 or 4 special being used when we're in Stage 2. In Torna, any element can combo into each other, with each member of the party being one of the 8 elements. Haze is wind and Laura is fire, for example. But what if you had a blade and driver combo happening at the same time? This would lead to a fusion combo. Here, our wind from Haze was done when the break was active, triggering the fusion combo and dealing significantly more damage than it normally would. Since this kills Gormott, we also get a joint combo finish, netting us a bunch of extra XP. This will all be on the test, by the way. I finished the fight against Gormott exactly 25 minutes into the speedrun, but I didn't have a ton of faith in the run. I had only 1 out of my required 3 Panda Pansies, and I was very quickly running out of spots where I could pick them up. After the extra spot, I had 2 Pansies and like 10 Roska Flower, which is exactly the same rarity, just useless for the speedrun. Our final gold chip is used on Bridget, giving us a crazy 200% increase to enemy drops, meaning we always get 2 enemy parts when killing monsters. So we quickly eradicate a family of Ferrises in order to complete a quest later. The search for the missing child took us past 1 final spot where we could get Panda Pansies, and considering the nature of this video, yeah, I got it, but on the very final item we picked up, keeping it very, very tense for me as I was doing it live. After meeting Kelly, we can finish the quest, but before leaving Gormott we have to run between a few cutscenes first, and then talk to Ged to get out of here.
Blade combo, 3rd stage!
Awesome.
We're now in the endgame. Almost all items are accounted for, and only a couple of bosses stand between us and our hats. But notice how I say almost. Lactonuts are a vegetable item that cannot be collected in Lasaria and only start to become available now, and they're needed immediately for the Feeding an Army quest. The other items here, Weeping Flower, Grimdark Crab, and Ferris Beast Meat, were all collected earlier on in the run. In order to get the world record, we needed to get lucky with the most brutal item in the speedrun. Spot 1 gave us no Lactonuts, Spot 2 gave us 2, and I even had 2 to spare after getting the 3rd spot. And on top of this, I got some tawny carrots too, which are needed later down the line. We also make use out of another campsite, by resting and using up all of the bonus XP we got from finding locations and completing quests, to get everyone's level as high as possible. Even with our gold and silver chips, these next fights can pack a punch, so we're going to need to be as prepared as we can be. First up, the 2 preoccupied Googles. The strategy here is one of controlled chaos. We'll need to be throwing arts and specials out when we can, trying to catch both the Googles in any AoE, and timing our driver combos to get good damage and fusion combos on top of everything else. Neither of them are too bulky, so basically anything we do will eventually lead to kill, and here I even got my fastest segment ever. We can use the Hyper Village skip travel location we got at the start of the run to get us closer to the next fight against these nests, who die in one shot to Snow Blast. Killing 3 of them gives us 5 nest extract, which we'll need later, and also enough SP on Laura to unlock the skill Quickfire combo. Before, we could only cancel out of auto attacks, but now we can cancel out of arts, meaning we can use an art into an art into an art with no downtime in between. This is just the final boost we'll need for the Slythe Jagron, our final battle of the run. Whilst our offense is insane for this point in the game, we haven't quite had the time nor the need to up any of our defenses until now. Unfortunately, the Jagron has the ability to basically one-shot any member of our party, including Hugo, potentially becoming too much damage to handle. Remember, once we're downed in combat, we lose some affinity and the bonuses of our skills, and therefore a ton of our damage. In phase 1, we're looking for a break so that we can topple with Jin and follow up with his tier 3 special, and thankfully we can just use Laura's Swallow's Flight until we've gotten one. This wasn't quite enough damage on its own, but Mithra could finish the job for us. This phase will end once the Jagron is at half health, introducing Minoth to give us our final blade for Adam. The strategy for phase 2 is to run to the side of the Jagron and start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. The Jagron will start out the fight with a rolling claw that'll deal massive damage, and if our timing is correct and luck is on our side, we can break him right out of the art animation. Now the biggest threat is out of the way, I just kept on pumping damage into it, and even if a second rolling claw knocked Jin out, we had dealt enough damage for cleanup to be pretty simple.
Indeed!
The run is not over yet. First we must bring Mungo 5 pieces of nest extract and 5 tawny carrots so he can make us some desert medicine, which I think may be a scam since we got through there just fine at the beginning of the run. We head back to Hyber to greet the locals and spend a night in the inn. We put our desert medicine to good use by warping straight through to the Auresco gate and then to the palace, finally allowing us to start bolstering sales, the Hat Percent quest. We talk to Obibi to find out what's bothering her, and then ask Deku Deku if he's able to invest in the failing business, returning to the shop with enough materials to make the hats. The knit hat needs all 4 of our cotton branches, 2 of our 6 angel sages, and our only sunflower rogue. The casual cap needs 4 of our 9 corkscrew creepers, all 3 of our panda pansies which nearly killed the whole run, and finally our floral soil that we picked up in Gormott. Time ends upon us making the tragic decision, and with no hesitation I chose the casual cap, thus ending my run in 41 minutes and 52 seconds, both the world record and the first ever sub 42 minute time.
Yes! okay, that's good. we got 41. Yippee! Yippee!
This run took me 113 attempts to get, and as you can imagine, it was built on the graves of many, many dead runs. Not enough items at the start, a zombie jump that was too slow, horrible lactonut RNG in the last 10 minutes, and oh so many resets to the tutorial fight going wrong. But through all that, I managed to achieve a goal time of mine, even if that means I'm taking Xenoblade's joke speedrun far too seriously. Thanks for watching.